Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission for November 19, 2020. The time is 4:31. My name is Michael Lambert, your city librarian. In the absence of having an incumbent staff member serving in the capacity of Library Commission Secretary, I will be serving as the default Library Commission Secretary this evening. Due to the COVID-19 health emergency and to protect library commissioners, staff, and the public, the San Francisco Public Main Library and the Corrett Auditorium are closed. However, members will be participating in the meeting remotely. This precaution is taken pursuant to the statewide stay-at-home order and all preceding and proceeding local, state, and federal orders, declarations, and directives. Commissioners will attend the meeting through video conference and participate in the meeting to the same extent as if they were physically present. I understand a couple of our commissioners may be having some connectivity issues, so they may have their video cameras turned off at different points, but they will try to keep those on as much as possible. Public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the Webex system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling local 1-415-655-0001 and entering the access code for this specific meeting. The access code for today's meeting is 146851211. And this information is also available on the meeting agenda, available on our website, sfpl.org. When connected by phone, members of the public can dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. Individuals joining via Webex should click the raise hand button in the lower right hand of their screen. It's in the lower right hand portion of the participant panel. So you can click on that icon in order to be added to the queue. Best practices for all public commenters are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down your TV or radio. Each commenter will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. All commenters will remain on mute until their line is open. In facilitating this event this evening and to assist in moderating public comment, I will be joined for operations support by the library's digital strategist, Bill Kolb. Mr. Kolb will be calling upon members of the public by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. The chat function built into Webex will not be monitored by commissioners or presenters and is not intended as a channel for providing comment or feedback to the commission. Commissioners and presenters will not respond to content added to the chat. I will now commence with roll call. Library commissioners in attendance are our president, Dr. Mary Wardell Giraduzzi, Vice President Susan Mall, Commissioners Ono, Huang, Wolf, and Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Lee is absent this evening. I'll turn it over to you, to Madam President.
Thank you very much, City Librarian. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you for confirming that. Hello and welcome to this meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission on November 19th. And I want to thank you, members of the public who are attending this meeting remotely. If you have not done so already, all the materials for this meeting are available to you for download on the Library Commission page of the library website, which is sfpl.org. We have a total of 8 agenda items this evening, so we're going to jump with item 1 on our agenda. We'll open it up for general public comment at this time. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. If you are using the WebEx interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right portion of the screen. If you have called into the WebEx dial-in number at 1-415-655-0001, please press *3 to line up to speak.
Madam President, we do have commenters in the queue.
Thank you so much. Can you please put the first commenter through?
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes begins now.
I guess I'm number 6. Is that correct?
That's correct. We can hear you, Peter.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. I'd like to say, first of all, that the procedures you have are very inadequate in terms of the description on the agenda. There's a great deal that is there, but there's also a great deal that's not there. I tried, for example, to call at 4:30 sharp just now and repeatedly was told that the numbers that I entered for the access code were either wrong or the meeting hasn't started yet. And the number that was read back to me was 4685, even though I had entered the 6+4 10-digit access code repeatedly and then was just hung up on. There was no way to know whether that meeting was in progress or whether it had started or anything else about the meeting, including whether I had the right number or not. Finally, after doing this 3 times and entering the access code multiple times, each time being told 4685 was no good or the meeting hadn't started, I finally was able to get in and the meeting had already started. That's not right, and that's certainly nerve-wracking for somebody who wants to know, is this the right meeting, and so on. You don't allow any slack for folks who may be unclear or not certain if they, for example, have been called on. At the last meeting, I was hearing that there was one person on the line, and then the next thing I was hearing was that caller number 6 can now talk. How would I know that caller number 6 is me? And of course, there's no opportunity to clarify, can you hear me, or anything else. The clock is ticking, and that's all time off of your public comment. That's wrong. That's not an opportunity for public comment according to the rules you have, which is 3 minutes. In general, I want to say that thank you for the mailed information sheet that Michael Lambert sent. I'm curious how many people or what proportion of the library's active users or inactive users got it. It was nicely arranged in something like 7 languages. You can correct me. It referenced magazine availability, and let's say that one of the problems with the service the library provides is there doesn't seem to be any quality control or any standards of service. I asked for 5 magazines. 3 of them, the most recent, were 5 months old, and the most recent of the 2 remaining were 2 months old. Thank you.
Thank you. Operator. Commenter group.
Hi.
Shima, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thanks so much, Bill. Hi, everyone. My name's Shima Avalos. I'm a librarian here in the San Francisco Public.
Is Zima there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Okay. I was actually just in a meeting where I was notified that library policy can't change without the sign-off of the commission. And I was thinking that in light of the city of San Francisco just passing Prop E, which amended the city charter with regards to the staffing levels of SFPD, if it might be time to reconsider the nature and the makeup of the Library Commission. If the Library Commission is signing off on our policies, but made up of individuals who don't have library experience and are appointed by the mayor, but it's not quite clear why or how they're chosen, and because their emails aren't listed on the website, there's no way for us to get in contact with them other than during these meetings, which during non-pandemic times when they're held in person are incredibly difficult for staff to attend because they do occur during most of our work times. Just something to consider in this time when we're reconsidering the city charter and how we can best serve our communities and how we as a city department that's rated so highly can do our best to make a positive change at City Hall and in our city and in our community. Thanks, that's all.
Operations, are there any further callers?
Madam President, there are additional commenters.
In the group?
Maurice, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maurice Rivers. I am the Executive Director of the OMI Cultural Participation Project in District 11. And I just was curious about what your plan is for the Ocean View Branch Library as well as the Ingleside Branch Library. They're closed. We were projected to have a new branch library built, and now that's all on hold. So I just wanted to know what your plan was for equity as far as District 11. Thank you so much.
Maurice. Are there further callers?
Madam President, there's one additional commenter.
Please put them through.
Caller number 2, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'd like to raise some concerns about the library's use of patron information. I've been receiving emails from Friends of the San Francisco Public Library, and this occurred in August, and I went back to look at the email I got from them, and it was about Summer Stride. You know, it said, thanks for participating in Summer Stride, and then asked for a donation to Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. And, you know, while I'm sure that Friends of the San Francisco Public Library is a wonderful organization that does great things for the San Francisco Public Library, when I did whatever I did to sign up for Summer Stride, I did not consent for the public library to provide my information to Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. And that is the only method that, as far as I'm aware, that Friends of the San Francisco Public Library could have gotten my contact information. So I'm very concerned about why the public library is providing my contact information to Friends of the San Francisco Public Library without my consent. And presumably I'm not the only library patron whom this has occurred to. And so I'd really like the library to, you know, review its privacy practices and make sure that they're guarding patrons' you know, personal information, and not just giving them to, you know, any nonprofit that happens to, you know, fund the library. And so, yeah, that's, it was, and I'm still getting emails from them. So yeah, I'm pretty concerned about that. And I'm also kind of concerned that this meeting today started in a closed session, where a practice session, which I don't know how that, yeah, which would seem to be equivalent to a closed session, which was, you know, not announced. So I feel like there's some Brown Act issues going on there. So yeah, I think the Library Commission needs to review how it conducts its meetings. So thank you.
Thank you for your. Any further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters.
Okay, seeing that there's none, we are going to close public comment at this time. And we will now move on to our next item on the agenda, which is a discussion of the Maya Angelou artwork at the main library. Explanatory documents are available to you, including the City Librarian memo dated November 16th, 2020. San Francisco Arts Commission, SFAC, Maya Angelou statue at the main library. That's what it's entitled. And we do have a presentation from both the city librarian as well as the evening. Grateful to have to give us an update. So I'll turn it over to the city librarian.
Thank you, President Wardell, and good afternoon, Library Commissioners. It's been nearly a year since the Library Commission discussed the Maya Angelou artwork project. You may recall this initiative was born out of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors resolution passed in 2018 entitled Affirming San Francisco's Commitment to 30% Female Representation in the Public Realm by the year 2020. The Maya Angelou artwork to be housed in front of the main library is set to honor one of the most important literary artists and activists of our time and serve as an ever-present role model and inspiration to girls and young women. By recognizing and honoring Dr. Angelou's contribution, this artwork will express the value the city places on the contributions and achievements of all women. Today, I'm pleased to introduce the Acting Director of Cultural Affairs for the San Francisco Arts Commission, Denise Bradley Tyson, and she is here to provide an update on the status of the Maya Angelou artwork project. Director Bradley?
Good afternoon, everyone. The main headline of my update is this. At the November 2nd, 2020 meeting of the Arts Commission, 2 motions were passed that named Lava Thomas as the recipient of the commission to produce a sculpture celebrating Dr. Maya Angelou to be sited outside of the main library on Larkin Street. The artist will receive $250,000 to design, fabricate, and deliver the sculpture to the city. On behalf of the San Francisco Arts Commission and the staff, I'm extremely pleased that the Dr. Angelou sculpture project will be moving forward and will be the first artist commission that realizes the Women's Recognition Public Art Fund legislation. It is time that we begin to see more women, and especially women of color, depicted on city property. And I know this will be the first of many monuments that reimagine who we venerate in public spaces and that reflect our values as a city. Moreover, the San Francisco Main Library is the perfect location for this monument, as Dr. Angelou is one of our nation's most iconic and important writers and activists. And she had a deep personal relationship with the library, especially while her son was growing up. Furthermore, and I use an exclamation point, I think monuments matter. The Arts Commission decision to approve Lava Thomas as the artist who is commissioned to create a monument to Maya Angelou is the first step in reframing our city's art collection to be one that includes women and people of color who are universal heroes that inspire all of us. We look forward to adding this representation of Dr. Angelou and all that she stands for to our civic art collection. Cities across the nation have complicated historical legacies. We want to be proud of who we exalt in public spaces and ensure that future generations see themselves in these monuments. In terms of the revised timeline for this project, we are currently in contract negotiation with the artist, which will include a schedule, but at the moment we are anticipating installation in fall 2022. This may seem like a long way off, but this ETA is due to the artist's current professional schedule since she has a number of pre-existing commitments and the long lead times we are currently experiencing with our fabricators due to shelter in place and COVID work restrictions. In other words, foundries are letting very few workers to the fabrication studios to follow health and safety protocols. They are running much slower than usual. This may be actually a benefit in that we hope to receive donations and/or grant funding to allow us to work with the library around public programming that will greatly expand the educational opportunities and the impact of Dr. Maya Angelou's sculptural presence at the library. We hope that these programs can be carried off as soon as we are under less restrictive conditions. In other words, we see this as a living, breathing monument, and we look forward to working with the library and its entire staff, with Michael and the entire staff, to activate this sculpture to make it a living, breathing memorial for especially young girls, for women, for people of color. And I think that her words, there's so much in her words that we can find something that's sort of appropriate to whatever situation I think that we face in these times in some of Dr. Angelou's written prose. So thank you, and we look forward to working with the library.
Thank you so much, Denise Bradley Tyson, for that update, as well as for your personal commentary on the import of this work, and the progress that we've made and the progress that we will continue to make as far as, and to give us the timeline, and really to help us understand why this is important. Before we move into our library discussion, we're going to go to public comment on this item. So we will open up public comment now on item number 2, which is the Maya Angelou artwork update. Then after that, we'll move into our discussion with and at that time we can have direct questions or comments we can have with Denise. So operations, is there any callers in the queue?
Madam President, just a reminder to all attendees to raise your hand by clicking the button in Webex, or to press *3 in order to be added to the queue for public comment. Madam President, there's now a commenter in the queue.
Please, would you put the commenter through?
Marcielle, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for your presentation, and I want to say I'm looking forward to this monument, because I feel that in this time of 2020 right now, with just the way things have been going, it is so refreshing to hear progress and see it, and I feel very proud of the San Francisco Public Library for having this. So thank you, Denise, for your presentation. It was wonderful, and it was a bright light in a day. And I apologize, my dog is drinking water very loudly. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Marcielle, for calling in and sharing that comment. Are there any further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter.
Please put the commenter through.
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, that's me, right?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. And I'm very glad to hear some of the other commenters and the comments. Those are very encouraging, and especially with regard to Brown Act issues and potential or actual violations. Let me say that I raised my hand perhaps shortly before you said to raise the hand, Madam Chair, and it said from the system that my hand was now raised. Yet apparently it was not raised, because when I heard just one person speaking, I became unsure whether I would be called on. And lo and behold, when I pressed *3, it turned out that apparently my hand was not raised, and now it was raised. So somewhere along the line, my hand was basically pushed down without notification to me. That's also wrong, and it's certainly a potential source of confusion for the public and a waste of time to even have to talk about it. With respect to the Maya Angelou statue, I'm certainly glad that that is making progress. This is certainly the library's terrace-facing City Hall is certainly an appropriate location. She will join the L's, the two L's that are stabiles that are also in that general area. Another artwork that the city owns that's on library property. I'm sorry to say that there was not clarification about the really enormous kerfuffle that happened on the way to getting to this point. Apparently, the folks who had sponsored the whole concept were not happy with how the wording of the contract letting changed to artwork rather than sculpture. And apparently they had a grander idea that they wanted something comparable to what, shall we say, men or white men get. Perhaps Maya Angelou on a pedestal on a horse, or something more heroic than what one of the finalists had in mind. I believe that the finalist has a very charming, down-to-earth, and perhaps more in keeping with Maya Angelou's personality, a more present presence, if you like, where she's at eye level.
3 minutes.
Right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Operations, are there any further callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional callers.
Okay, seeing that there's none, we're going to move this item into our commission discussion. Commissioners, there's no action to take on this, but we're just going to have an opportunity to have any exchanges, comments, questions on this item. And we also have both our city librarian as well as Denise Bradley Tyson available. So at this particular time, commissioners, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Then I'm going to ask for support by operations because I can't quite see whose hand is up, and let me know which one.
Madam President, Commissioner Wolf has raised her hand.
Okay, great. Commissioner Wolf, would you go ahead and make your comments?
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the Arts Commission and most recently Denise Bradley Tyson as the interim executive director, the very dedicated staff there for all the work they have done to bring this project forward. I think as a library commissioner, I couldn't be more proud that the first sculpture in this series honoring women, distinguished women, will be on the steps of the public library in Civic Center, in the center of our city, that will be visible to everyone visiting and participating in democratic activities there. So I just want to say how proud I am to be part of this. I am grateful that I had a chance to serve on the selection committee. Commissioner Mall was selected to do so and participated in the first half. I participated in the second half. And I just want to say that the selection of Alava Thomas, I think, is going to be a really great moment in our city, and thinking through the role in which she has played in inspiring writers, young and old, and people to think creatively and to reflect on their own community. So just want to thank the Arts Commission, thank the library team as well, and we really look forward to making this the first sculpture in this series. So thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf. Are there any other comments or questions from other commissioners? And I'll need to assist.
Madam President, Commissioner Ono has raised her hand.
Commissioner Ono, please.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much, Denise Bradley Tyson, for your presentation. I won't reiterate what Commissioner Wolf said, but I agree with her totally. But I do want to thank Dr. Wardell, Commissioner Wolf, and Mall for also being part of the selection. And I am just so proud to be part of San Francisco and having having women honored by statues and also by a great artist and writer and poet. So thank you very much, everyone, for all of the work that you've done to get this. And I understand about the timeline. 2022 is not that long, and especially with COVID, that time frame sounds reasonable. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. Operations, is there any other commissioners with their hand up?
Madam President, I don't see any additional hands raised at this time.
Okay, I just want to then, if anyone raises their hand while I'm talking, let me know. I'm just going to make my comments on this. This is a critical time and a critical moment, and there's not much more to add to Denise's comments. Monuments do matter, and our children need to be able to see themselves. And I say our children, I'm talking about all of our children. And so by having Dr. Maya Angelou at the footsteps of the main library in San Francisco, in the heart of our municipal square, in many ways it's almost a public square of San Francisco, is I think is the appropriate step for us to be taking at this particular time. And then to have a woman of color, a Black identified woman that is leading the artwork as the creative, as well as one that is going to provide us this opportunity with Ms. Thomas, is really one of the most important things we have done. And I've served on this commission for some years now, but as I joined Commissioner Wolf, that this is actually one of the most important things, outside of hiring Michael, our current city librarian, this is perhaps one of the most important things that we have done. And so I want to thank you so much for stepping into a public service role. We know of you stepped in, you provided leadership at a time that leadership was greatly needed. And I just want to say thank you so much for helping us navigate, helping the city navigate what was a difficult process, and to get us to the point where we're at right now, where we can actually now see the end result that we have. So I just want to thank you, and I just want to double check, since I can't see whose hand is up. Operation, is there anyone else's hand up right now?
Madam President, I don't see any additional hands raised at this time.
Dr. Lopez has her hand raised.
Okay, Commissioner Lopez, please.
I just want to say, because I'm not going to repeat. I agree with everything that has been said so far, but it's really an honor, and it's really great to know that this monument is going to be in our city, not only because it's is going to be in the city, but also because Maya is an international figure that has transcended many cultures, many continents, and San Francisco is visited by many people as well. So I think that is amazing, and I just wanted to say that is going to be, I'm really excited. 22 is not far, and I'm very proud to be part of the development of that as well. So thank you
so much, Commissioner Lopez, for those comments. So I think that is it. Thank you so much, Denise, for being with us this evening, for being with the public this evening, and to share that so it's part of the official public record of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. With that, we are going to say thank you, so you can go on and do other things that you have on your schedule this evening as we move on to our third agenda item, which is equally important, and it's actually related to the Maya Angelou artwork in that we're going to talk about the Public Library's Department of Racial Equity Plan and discussion. In many ways, the work that Denise is leading on behalf of this the City and County of San Francisco with the Maya Angelou artwork update she just gave us is a part of the racial equity work. So these two things are definitely related to one another. So this is going to be a discussion as well. There's no action, and there's supplemental documents, including the November 16th, 2020 Departmental Racial Equity Plan from the San Francisco Public Library, and then we'll have a presentation. So I'll go ahead and turn that over to our city librarian who will lead us presentation.
Thank you, President Wardell. As your city librarian, I'm pleased to introduce the staff who will be presenting information about the library's efforts to craft our first ever departmental racial equity plan. As a department of the City and County of San Francisco, the San Francisco Public Library is legally mandated to develop and implement a racial equity action plan. In addition, the city ordinance number 188-19, the legislation that gave birth to the city's Office of Racial Equity, also requires that city departments designate employees as racial equity leaders who will act as a liaison to the Office of Racial Equity. And we are so fortunate to have extraordinary leaders in our ranks at SFPL to guide this work. As background, the San Francisco Public Library formed a racial equity task force in early 2018, which has since become a standing committee. The library's chief operating officer, Maureen Singleton, serves as the management team liaison to the Racial Equity Committee. And she's been working with staff for the past few weeks to develop the library's racial equity plan. She will introduce our Racial Equity Committee co-chairs. Maureen?
Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. I am deeply honored to be joined today by my colleagues Alejandro Gallegos and Shauna Sherman, who are the co-chairs of the library's Racial Equity Committee. They're going to provide some background on the city's new Office of Racial Equity, information about the Racial Equity Action Plan itself, some information on the work to date, and the next steps in this effort. I'm proud of the team and of the work that we've already done and their commitment to a better future. Before I turn it over to Alejandro to walk through the presentation, I just want to give a quick shout out to Shauna Sherman, who's also here. She may not be able to stay for the whole discussion because she has to conduct a program at 5:30, but she'll stay as long as she can. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Alejandro. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maureen and Michael. And thank you to the commission for inviting us to share with you this, it'll be brief, this brief update on our work. Oh, if I can get next slide, please. I think it can be a little confusing thinking about our library's Racial Equity Committee, about the city's Office of Racial Equity, the Racial Equity Action Plan, these different components and how they came together and where we are. So this slide right here is an attempt to catch us up to now, with the orange bullets representing kind of the genesis and the purpose of the city's Office of Racial Equity. I would draw your attention to dots 2, 3, and 4. Well, first one is that in July 2019, an ordinance passed, and that was the genesis of the Office of Racial Equity. But drawing your attention to the next 3 dots, what does the Office of Racial Equity do? Well, they advocate, they convene and build coalitions, they illuminate disparities and monitor progress towards equity goals. The subsequent bullet points are the time frame for our Racial Equity Action Plan, the template of which was given to us in June, and which is due to the Office of Racial Equity in just a few days by December 31st. At least phase 1 is due. Phase 2 will come to us next calendar year, hopefully early next calendar year. Next slide. This slide shows the 7 discrete sections in our phase 1 action plan. As you've noticed, I'm sure these are largely inward facing, taking a look at our institution, at our library, and at our practices. And much of this relies on data and analysis to give us the story of our library. Who are we hiring and how are we recruiting? Who's leaving library employment? Who's promoting? Are there trends in discipline that we should be aware of? Are we able and can we create a structure that elevates interested staff to professional positions? These 7 sections are the heart of what we're doing, and these are what the topics that we're tackling. Next slide, please. So this work and this plan takes many, many hands. These are the teams, the teams listed here are the teams that are currently involved in this work. And I say currently because everyone will be involved in this work. But I'd really like to acknowledge all of them, and especially the heavy lift from Library HR, from RSA, and the Racial Equity Committee. And of course, this work rests much easier when you feel supported by your library administration and your library commission. These are the immediate next steps. You'll be seeing us again. I'm being brief now because you'll be seeing us again next month, presenting the plan to you. Those 7 sections that you saw earlier, we'll be able to go into more detail about what we're coming up with, what our plan is. We'll be reviewing our plan with the Office of Racial Equity. Then we finalize and we submit our plan. Most importantly, and I think, most importantly is this is the beginning of the library's heavy work of upholding the words that we're writing down in this document. That is the beginning of the work starting early next year. When this is finalized, that's when everyone will be involved. And that's when we're counting, especially on library administration, especially on the Library Commission, to support this work and to support these changes that we'll be proposing. And I'm looking forward to sharing those proposals to you next month. I want to thank you again for having us. I don't want you to get sick of me talking to you like every 6 months, but here we are, and I really do look forward to you, and we do really want to thank you for your genuine support in this endeavor.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, there's a little bit of feedback right here. If we are done with that, we are going to now move into our public comment.
Madam President, and there's one commenter in the queue.
Please, would you put the commenter through?
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes begins now.
Well, I guess that's me. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. First of all, I'm glad that we are receiving a report and that the library is doing this, presumably in accordance with the legislation that was passed in 2018. I'm a little bit disappointed, and maybe more than a little bit, that we hear that this has been ongoing since, as Michael Lambert, our city librarian, said, early 2018. And perhaps somebody could remind me when we have heard about this previously, but I don't recall hearing about this ongoing work until this meeting. With respect to the library's plans, this seems very sketchy in the sense of high level. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but high level, considering the fact that apparently it is due next month. And the memo that the city librarian received and passed on from the main people in charge says that the latest template from the folks in charge of the Racial Equity Action Plan template have just provided what they call minor adjustments just in mid-November. Another thing that I'm concerned about more substantially is that I don't see that there's any input provision for the public. The public certainly might have some thoughts about what is going on, as well as what they think might be necessary in any kind of a planning that you're doing. And I don't see in the teams involved or in any activity involving putting this together, I don't see that the public is included in any way. And given that you want to turn over the final product next month, as I said, with an extremely high level information here, in this 4-page handout that we received as part of the agenda packet, and that's all, it doesn't really give much of an opportunity for the public to chime in or even to give any kind of an opinion at, for example, a library commission meeting. By public, I would also include librarians, either anonymously or in any other way publicly. In any case, I appreciate this work. I appreciate that there seem to be serious and good people working on it, and thank you for doing this and presenting this today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any other commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
Okay. Seeing that there's none, we're going to move into our commission discussion on this item, which is number 3. Commissioners, you do have the document in front of you, and you also have library staff, particularly those that have been working as racial equity leaders on behalf of the San Francisco Public Library, available to you. And so at this time, if you have any questions and or comments, now would be the time to do so.
Madam President, I see Commissioner Ono has her hand raised.
Great. Commissioner Ono, please unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Alejandro, for that presentation. We will never get tired of hearing from you, even if we see you every month. But I do look forward to next month to see the plan and get more of the information from your team. I do appreciate that you have so many people working on this, not only your committee, but also the other departments. And especially during this time when, you know, a lot of people are scattered and it's very hard to work on one document during sheltering in place, and also people being virtual meetings and everything else. So I appreciate everything that you and Shauna and Maureen are doing, and just keep going, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. Are there any other commissioners?
Madam President, I don't see any additional hands raised at this time.
Okay. I have some things that I like to say. First of all, I've had an opportunity to work with Shauna and Alejandro over the course of the last year and a half, as under Michael's leadership, the city librarian's leadership, they began a kind of an internal task force on racial equity that even predates, I believe, the Office of Racial Equity in the city. And so one of the things that Michael immediately did was to turn his attention as the new city library at that time on the issue of equity and inclusion. And so I've seen both Shauna and Alejandro do this work for a period of time. One thing I like to say about racial equity, and so this work predates the racial reckoning and the kind of the more critical consciousness that a lot more of America has gained in 2020. This work predates that. So I just say that first. The other thing that I want to acknowledge is that as I've looked at the framework that has been put out by the City of San Francisco's Office of Racial Equity, it's one of the finest that I've seen anywhere. There's probably only several other cities in the United States that is even thinking at the level that we are, and the work product that they've put in place out of this new office, because racial equity work is, the work that I'm also involved in professionally in higher education and as a professor. It really is a very detailed accountability aspiration, as well as what I call transparency. So when you get to that level of aspiration as well as accountability, there is going to be a lot of work that's involved in this racial equity plan. I've seen just the preliminary work that Shauna and Alejandro are leading, as well as Maureen. And one of the things that I'm going to say is that we may need to continue to understand what it means to be accountable and transparent in ways that we have not ever done before for the purposes of realizing the promise of racial equity. And so someone that does this work professionally, I know that there has to be a monitoring aspect. So writing the plan is one thing. Articulating the plan is one thing. But to monitor to the degree that we're able to fulfill what we said, what we did, are we doing what we said we were going to do, is a whole nother thing. And most organizations actually are not real good at doing it, and other ones actually fail at it altogether. So one of the things that I'm going to say, just because this is the area of my expertise, is that as a commission, and also I'm going to say this to the city librarian, that I know the three of them have been identified as racial equity leaders on behalf of SFPL. One of the things that we may need to continue to do is to understand to what degree is required to fulfill what the Office of Racial Equity is asking SFPL to do, and can we do it with the current personnel that we have, meaning that there may be a need that arises where we may have to have someone who is just 100% dedicated to this racial equity work within the library. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, but I'm just telling you from experience, there may be a need to do that, meaning that Alejandro and Shauna cannot continue to do this heavy lift on behalf of SFPL. And Maureen, as the chief COO, and all the responsibilities that she has, and she's going to, and shortly going to be talking about the needs of the budget, the 2-year cycle of the budget, she cannot take on this racial equity work as a leader in the ways that the monitoring piece is going to be. So that's the only commentary that I want to add. They're doing a heavy lift job. That's all I'm telling you. The people that's engaged in it, it's hard work to do this right. And San Francisco has put forth a racial equity framework, which is the right way of doing it. And so I'm really excited for SFPL. I'm really excited for San Francisco for leading the way again. And doing this work right in the way a lot of municipalities and a lot of organizations never get it right. And we have to say, understand that to expect staff members to do this work on top of their current responsibilities is probably not going to be the way that we're going to fulfill it. And so I just want to put a little thing out there for the commissioners, just to be, don't be surprised if you see the staff put in a request, the management puts in a request for some positions to do this work from a transparency, accountability, and monitoring perspective. So that's all that I have on this. I don't see. I actually was able to transition back to my computer, so I could actually see hands raised up, and I don't see any raised up. And so if there's none, and since this was a discussion item, we can just say thank you to Maureen, thank you to Shauna, and thank you to Alejandro for making the presentation on behalf of all the library for the racial equity work. So let's move on our agenda. And we are going to move into that budget talk. And our fourth item is the fiscal years 2022 and 2023, our budget priorities. This is a discussion of our budget. There will be no action on this. And we have explanatory documents and attachments 1 and 2. And so I'm going to turn it over to City Librarian and our Chief Operations Officer to lead us through this discussion.
Thank you, President Wardell. Ordinarily, this time of year, we've all become accustomed to Maureen Singleton's orchestration of the library's budget process. But this evening, I'm pleased to turn it over to Maureen, who will be introducing the library's new CFO, Heather Green, who has succeeded Maureen and who will be guiding us through the FY22-23 budget priorities. Maureen?
All right. Thank you, Michael, for this opportunity. And yes, I'm very excited to share with the commission as well as the public that we have a new CFO for the library. Her name is Heather Green, and in the previous 5 years, she has worked at the city's Office of Resilience and Capital Planning under the City Administrator's Office. There, she was the Director of Capital Planning and a Deputy Resilience Officer. Prior to that, she was involved in government consulting work for the City of Boston, and her dissertation was on the gentrification of the East Village in New York City. She joined our team in mid-October, so I am going to cut her a little bit of slack today, and this will be my last presentation for the commission, where I'll walk through some background information and how the process will run. But from this point forward, or after today, you will be having presentations from Heather Green. So at this moment, I wanted to give Heather an opportunity to say a few words and introduce herself to the commission in general. So Heather?
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Michael, and good evening, commissioners. It's a great honor to be joining the library. I am so excited. Maureen gave a little brief on my background, and I've been a user of libraries and lover of libraries my whole life, and so now first with research and now as a mom to 2 young boys. So really appreciate all that the library can be and will be, and very proud of all the work that we have been doing in the pandemic and contributing to the city's recovery and response. So, just really, really honored to be a part of this institution, and look forward to walking you through the rest of the budget process this year. And thank you, Maureen, for taking this one last one.
All right, next slide, please. So traditionally, as we have our first discussion about the budget in November annually, we take a quick look back before we start talking about what the process is going to be like for the upcoming fiscal year. So at a very high level, we are providing information about our budget and comparing it over the 3 fiscal year periods. So fiscal year 20, which was last year, and then the current year that we're in, and what was proposed to be part of fiscal 22 moving forward. As many of you know, the economic impact of the pandemic forced the city to redo its budget approach. And we went back to the commission in June to talk about how our revenues had changed, and therefore how the investments that the commission had approved in February needed to be adjusted. Those details are provided for you in attachment 1. And all of our budget information is as of September 30th, 2020. When we built out the budget in June and July with the mayor's office, and then subsequently with the Board of Supervisors in the negotiation phase, we prioritized our core services to the vulnerable populations. We were mindful of the economic uncertainty. So in other words, we were careful about what we put in the budget and how much fund balance we were using. We also wanted to make sure that we were maintaining our assets in state of good repair. So we did include investments in our capital renewals. and a partial investment in our 2 branch projects for Chinatown and Ocean View until we can work together with the city to find another way to fund those projects in the long term. As is typical in any budget phase or negotiation process, we interact with the board's budget analyst office. And our approach always is, if we're going to agree to reductions, it's never going to be anything that's detrimental to the provision of service for our public. For the fiscal 21 and 22 cycle, we were able to come to an agreement with the board's analyst office that kept the reductions to less than 1% of the mayor's proposed budget for each of the fiscal years. Those attachments, or attachment 2, details out for you what those proposals are. One thing I wanted to highlight is we did agree to a reduction in our police work order budget for patrolling services at the main library in Eureka Valley because we felt like those services were no longer needed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So at a high level, the library's revenue continues to be largely driven by the Library Preservation Fund. It is usually around 95 to 97% of our budget. You will see over the 3-year period, we do see a reduction in the Library Preservation Fund based on the economic conditions. But we do start to see it creep back up a little bit in fiscal year 22. So our overarching budget is for the current fiscal year, which is fiscal 21, is $151.7 million, and then an estimated $157.45 for 22. And just as a quick side note, our fines revenue sunsetted in fiscal year 20, and that's why you don't see that represented as a source of revenues for the library after that. Next slide, please. So there are 2 ways you can slice your review of our budget on the expenditure side, and one is by cost category, and that's what you're going to see here. Our largest category, of course, is for labor for all of our wonderful staff who provide key services to the public. It accounts for roughly 66% of our budget, and that includes both salary and fringe benefits. And from year to year, the next highest category always depends on what it is that we're investing in. And in this case, the next highest capacity or category is for our collections budget for fiscal 21 at $19.6 million. After that, you're looking at the services of other departments. So this is where we pay other departments to provide services for us, or that they serve as a pass-through when they pass along, say, our light, heat, and power bills from the PUC. Next slide, please. So the other way to slice our budget is to take a look at it by division. And as you can see here, our largest portion of our budget is for the branches. And for fiscal 21, you're looking at approximately $32.6 million. And for 22, that's at about $33.55 million. After that, you're going to see collections and technical services as the highest next division, but that's largely driven by the fact that the collections budget is housed in its division. After that, you're looking at the chief of Maine and then facilities. One thing that I wanted to call out is that the table for the FTE allocation by fiscal year that went out with the explanatory documents had an error in the link. I apologize that I did not catch that before publication. The links for the material provided last week for the branch and the main were correct. It was the other remaining categories that did not have a proper link. Again, my apologies for not catching that before it was produced, but what is presented here today is accurate and shows the allocation by the applicable divisions. So bottom line, our full-time equivalent employee count is roughly the same as what it was in fiscal year 20, with a slight change to recognize the fact that we have some level of salary savings that's anticipated. The branch and the main continue to be the largest divisions for full-time equivalent employees. Next slide, please. And then just a quick reminder for the investments that we built into the last budget cycle for fiscal year 2, or fiscal year 22 rather, is an investment of about $1 million in e-collections, implementing a library hub kiosk for about $500,000, sustaining our investment in financial coaching services, and enhancing the roofing program for our facilities, again, to try and keep our facilities in a state of good repair. Next slide, please. Along with our budget submission to the mayor and the Board of Supervisors, annually we include our accept and expend legislation for the support that we get from the Friends of the Library. For the current fiscal year, the amount is just over $809,000, and it supports various activities such as youth programs, adult programs, and special collections. Those services are being adjusted for the virtual world, but they are still just as committed to providing services for our public. Next slide, please. As is standard each year when we start walking through the budget cycle process, we provide a high-level calendar of the phases of any budget development. That includes budget development, negotiations, and then the finalization of the budget. As you can clearly see here, this is our preliminary discussion with the Commission about our priorities. Next slide, please. And many of you are aware of this, but particularly for Dr. Lopez, who's new to our commission, the library, along with many other city departments on an annual basis, creates what's called a rolling 2-year budget. And that means each year we create and propose a budget that covers 2 fiscal years. So for the upcoming cycle, our year 1 of the 2-year budget will be fiscal 22, and year 2 will be fiscal 23. We are expecting the Library Preservation Fund estimate figures from the Controller's Office in December, and to finalize our fund balance estimates in December as well. Next slide, please. So building a budget is about envisioning the future, where we want to strengthen our foundation and how we want to evolve to meet the community needs. The management team relies on a set of strategic priorities as guideposts to build our budget. All of these together, partnerships for excellence, literacy and learning, youth engagement, organizational excellence, digital strategies, and facilities maintenance and infrastructure, contribute to the creation of a premier urban library, a library that fosters a connected community through shared experiences, equitable access to quality resources, and building an inclusive environment. Next slide, please. So some of the investments that we anticipate making as part of this proposal that you'll see starting with next month for fiscals 22 and 23 include racial equity, economic recovery and resiliency support, collection enhancements, capital and facilities management investments, program support, and then ongoing investments in technology. And as we typically do each November when we start to introduce the budget process and our priorities, we're also seeking advice and input from the Commission on where you would like to see us invest as we prepare our budget investment proposals for review and discussion at future meetings. Next slide, please. And that actually concludes my presentation, but of course I am here to answer any questions that the commissioners have. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Maureen, for that very detailed overview. We know this is not the first presentation that we will have on our 2-year budget cycle. But thank you for getting us prepared and helping us understand what the budget priorities are going to be coming in the months ahead before we do our approval process. At this time, we'd like to go to our public comment on this agenda item, the budget item, and if we can have operations, please let us know if there are any callers in the queue.
Madam President, there's only one commenter in the queue.
Please, would you put them through?
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening again. It's Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. And when I say how we can be reached, I think it would be useful, as a previous commenter said, to have a much better sense of how to reach library folks, including staff, but in particular the commissioners who do not post and whose emails are not posted, as in many other commissions and bodies in the city they are. First of all, I'm sorry to hear it sounds as though Maureen is leaving, and I guess I'm wondering if that's correct or if she's heading into the stratosphere above or connected to the library in some fashion. She has done, I think, an outstanding job that I think we have all appreciated. And to welcome the new person. I would be very interested actually to read that PhD thesis on gentrification in the East Village. I think that would be a good preparation for what's happening at the library. Let's talk about the presentation, and let me say that I hope that perhaps the new person might do what I've been unable to get folks to do at the library, and that is, especially for the folks that are on the telephone as I am, to number the pages of the presentation so that we know what page we're talking about, or even to announce what page heading is for each page that you talk about. We've been very concerned for a long time about de-bookification, and I don't see the word book or books anywhere in the budget whatsoever. And it's very unclear what some of these things are providing. For example, in the first substantive page, what is services to vulnerable populations? How? What? We, for example, talked about how you're leaving out people who don't have access to the internet, and those largely are vulnerable populations. What are you doing for those? Not much. They've gotten mostly huge cuts in any kind of access or service from the library. What is there's a contradiction on the page. Fine revenue, there's 2 different numbers on that page. In general, there's a lack of explicit discussion about what are you talking about. And again, I would be concerned about racial equity near the last page. What does that mean? What are you doing? And what is economic recovery and resiliency support, and so on and so forth? The pie chart showing what collections and so on are getting doesn't show books versus other materials or the various types of materials. And the increased only e-collections is wrong without increase in books.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Operations, is there any other commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no commenters at this time.
Okay, seeing that there's none, we're going to close comment on this agenda item, and we're going to move into our commission discussion. Commissioners, again, this is not an item that requires any action this evening, but an opportunity for you to comment or ask questions. And so at this time, I'd like to call Commissioner Ono.
Hi, thank you very much. To thank Maureen for the great presentation as always, and I am so glad to welcome Heather Green to our management team as a new CFO. You have big shoes to fill, but I know you'll fill them aptly. And Maureen, I know we'll still see you, so I'm looking forward to next month hearing from Heather and the new budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ono. Is there any other commissioners that have any comment on the city librarian's report, any portion of it?
This is actually the budget presentation.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Budget presentation. Thank you so much for correcting me, city librarian. You see, I was already moving ahead. Thank you for holding my horses. Hold back, Mary. Okay. Any other comments on the budget, commissioner colleagues?
Madam President, I see Commissioner Lopez has her hand raised.
Please, Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you for the presentation. This is really, as the newest member, this is really good to get a review. And thank you for clarifying, Maureen. That was very helpful. I look forward to hearing more about, the next steps for the budget. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lopez, for that comment. And I just want to say that I want to thank the last caller that we had on this agenda item, the public comment that acknowledged Maureen Singleton's performance, which has been outstanding in the area of not only budget management, but breaking down very complex and sometimes onerous, budget items into very accessible. When I say accessible to individuals who may not have her background and her training in budget and finance. So I want to thank Maureen, but we know that she continues will be not only available to Ms. Green, but can also be a mentor to her. So we are very happy to have both of them with us, and I want to welcome our new CFO as well. So with that, we are going to now move into our next item, which is the City Librarian's Report. And this is an opportunity for the City Librarian to share announcements, to give us updates, and the comings and goings and items within the San Francisco Public Library.
Thank you so much, President Wardell. I have a number of reports this evening, and I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter. Kathy Del Neo is our Chief of Branches, and this evening she's going to be presenting on the library's partnership with the Department of Elections. Kathy?
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, Commissioners. As Michael shared, I'm Kathy Del Neo. I'm the Chief of Branches. Every year, the library's branch and facilities divisions partner with the Department of Elections to welcome precinct polling to our libraries. Nearly a year ago, the library committed to host precinct polling at our branch libraries in the May primary election and the November 2020 presidential election. Of course, when we started planning, we imagined that this year would be just like every other presidential election year. Next. But as you know, 2020 has not been like other years. That said, our elections are an essential piece of our democracy, and the election needed to go on despite the COVID-19 emergency. This year, the Department of Elections worked closely with the Department of Public Health and the City Administrator's Office to plan a safe polling experience for our community. So on November 3rd, our Anza, Bernal Heights, Eureka Valley, Glen Park, Golden Gate Valley, Ingleside, Merced, Noe Valley, North Beach, Ocean View, Ortega, Park, Presidio, Richmond, Visitation Valley, and Western Addition branches all hosted precinct polling from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Next slide. In the months leading up to Election Day, Acting Northeast District Manager Genevieve Feldman visited branches with election staff so that they could develop site-specific protection plans for each branch where precinct polling would take place. These plans were reviewed by the Department of Public Health and the City Administrator's Office to ensure that polling would be safe. Each site had a precise layout to ensure social distancing. Elections developed a manual for poll workers outlining the specific manner in which they would conduct voting this year. Social distancing was enforced and masks were worn. Poll workers disinfected surfaces frequently throughout the day. Next slide, please. This year, the Department of Elections sent every registered voter a ballot by mail in response to the COVID-19 emergency. When it became apparent that the community members were concerned about mailing their ballots, Elections decided to provide additional ballot drop-off stations. Initially, the Department of Elections asked us to host ballot drop-off stations at just 2 of our branches, Bayview and Excelsior. Then, with only a few weeks to plan, Elections was asked to expand ballot drop-off stations so that there would be at least 1 ballot drop-off station in each of San Francisco's supervisorial districts. Next. Our partners at the Department of Elections turned to us for help to expand this important service. I'm proud to report that we hosted ballot drop-off stations at Anza, Bayview, Excelsior, Golden Gate Valley, Mission Valley, Ortega, Park, and West Portal branches. These ballot drop-off stations were open on Saturday, October 31st, Sunday, November 1st, Monday, November 2nd, and on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd. Many of the sites were able to be used relatively independently by the election staff, but the Anza, Bayview, and Excelsior branches required that staff be on site each day to provide storage access to the elections team. Next slide. Because this election was of such significance, we wanted everything to run smoothly. For that reason, we asked branch staff to help ensure that the ballot drop-off teams and the polling site teams could gain access to branches. Staff reported to branches throughout the city at 5:45 a.m. to disarm alarms and to welcome the precinct polling teams. Next slide, please. On election day, library staff needed to remain on site until ballots were picked up by the sheriffs. At some locations, that was as late as 10:30 p.m. this year. Security staff supported early arrivals at many locations and were on site to provide support at branches where polling took place within branch library reading rooms. To support public services staff and the Department of Elections teams, our dedicated custodial staff cleaned and disinfected branches in advance of the polling and again after polling was completed to prepare our community hub sites and the SFPL to-go locations and to ensure that we could resume service. Our engineering staff were on hand to troubleshoot small issues that arose with lights and other timer-operated systems at our branches. Next slide. We heard a lot of appreciation for the planning and support that went into making San Francisco Public Library's participation in the elections process this year from our dedicated public service staff in the branches. We also felt the love from community members who shared their gratitude to staff for hosting polling at our branches on social media. Next slide. This year, hosting elections at branch libraries was truly a team effort by the whole library. The branch team, I cannot thank them enough for the dedication that they showed to public service and to our democracy. We also want to extend our gratitude to our partners in custodial, security, engineering, human resources, and the management team. And you know what? I forgot. We also need to thank our Chief of Maine office. We had our assistant chief of Maine was out at one of the branches on election night until closing with our chief of community program partnerships. Everyone put in a tremendous effort to support elections activity in the branches. One of our early reporters was none other than our city librarian who showed up at, I think, 5:30, 5:45 at Western Addition branch. We really appreciate the hard work done by our partners in the Department of Elections in providing safe voting access to our community. I just want to again thank the whole team of staff who helped to make this go so smoothly. And we're really thrilled that so many eligible voters in San Francisco were not only able to say that they voted, but that they did so at their local library. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And I just want to acknowledge Kathy's leadership in coordinating this partnership, which changed a lot over time down to the wire. And Kathy's attention to detail really saved us and made sure that we delivered on our promise to the community. Next slide, please. Okay, next I'd like to provide an update on our SFPL To Go service. We've come a long way in 3 months since we started holds pickup at the main library and Excelsior. Next slide, please. I'm pleased to report as of last Thursday, we stood up our 10th SFPL To Go location. Given our ongoing challenges with staffing capacity, it is a significant milestone for us to hit double digits in the number of branches now operational. I'm particularly encouraged because we've now resumed library services in the northwest quadrant of the city, an area that previously relied heavily on the Richmond Branch Library, which is currently a community learning hub. So it's wonderful to be able to bring ANZA online now. Next slide, please. I want to acknowledge the branch staff who have prepared ANZA to launch last week. We're fortunate to have Lynn Maez, the Ocean View branch manager, temporarily stepping up and stepping in to take on this assignment as the acting branch manager for the ANZA Branch Library. She's stepping in for Regan Gong, who is currently serving as the acting Northwest district manager. Next slide, please. And here are some more photos of our ANZA team members. We're also fortunate to have Lynn's trusty colleague, Ruben Juarez, who is also a transplant from Ocean View. So we have a good mix of the veteran ANZA staff along with our Ocean View transplants. Next slide, please. So to review, here's a citywide map that shows our starred SFPL To Go locations. You can see that our coverage throughout the city has now improved with ANZA coming into the mix. The blue stars represent our SFPL To Go sites where actually the blue stars represent SFPL To Go. No, I got this wrong. Blue represents SFPL To Go sites. Those are our 10 branches. The red stars represent the SFPL To Go sites. Thank you for bearing with me as I got that right. So our bookmobiles are currently deployed in the Bayview, the Ocean View, the Mission, and Treasure Island. And I just want to acknowledge the public comment that we heard at the outset of the meeting. We're really constrained in the amount of service that we can provide right now, but we are doing the best we can with the available staffing capacity. We currently only have about 55% of our regular staffing capacity available to us to deliver library service. So we will continue to do as much as we can. Next slide, please. As you can see on this slide, SFPL now has 10 active. Oh, wait a minute. I have lost my order here. This is actually the data slide for the main library. As you can see, in nearly 3 months since we began this service, we've settled into a somewhat consistent range of around 200 to 250 visitors per day. Next slide, please. So in the branches, you can see a rise in patronage since the service began, which is only partially explained by the increase in the number of branches offering the service. If you take a closer look at Excelsior Branch Library, for example, in the light blue, during the first month of SFPL To Go service at that branch, it rarely saw more than 100 visitors in a single day. Now at 3 months into the service, Excelsior is regularly seeing 200 to 300 patrons a day. In the aggregate, the 10 branches offering this service are closing in on 1,000 visitors per day, and we expect that number to continue to rise as people grow more comfortable with the service model. Next slide, please. Taking a quick look at the Bookmobile Services, you can also see that Ocean View in the green has been a very popular stop so far. And the Mission Bookmobile in blue has recently experienced its most popular day of service. So people are becoming more and more aware of this opportunity. Collectively, the Bookmobiles are seeing several hundred patrons per week at the 4 sites. And as I mentioned, as staffing capacity permits, we'll continue to enhance the level of service that we provide throughout the city, whether we bring additional branches online from SFPL to go, or if we're able to increase Bookmobile service. We are stretched thin with the number of staff who are still deployed as disaster service workers. Nearly 1/4 of our workforce is still deployed, but I feel good about the level of service we've been able to ramp up with our available capacity. So that concludes the SFPL to go update. Next slide, please. I also have a brief report on the status of the community hubs. As a reminder, this initiative is a partnership with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families and Recreation and Parks Department to support the city's most vulnerable populations of school-aged children with their distance learning. These hubs also provide access to meals and social and emotional supports. You may recall last month, we previously reported out on the successful hubs activation at the Richmond Branch Library and the Bernal Heights Branch Library. Next slide, please. Since the October 5th launch at Richmond and Bernal, we've opened community hubs at Visitation Valley and North Beach. Visitation Valley Branch Library has 10 slots for school-aged children, and it's worth noting that the Visitation Valley Community Hub is operating out of the community room, which has a separate entrance and its own distinct zone of the library that can remain segregated. Our SFPL to go operation is open from the front entrance of the library. The North Beach Branch Library has 13 slots available for school-aged children. Next slide, please. On November 9th, the Western Addition Branch Library opened as a community hub with 15 of their 16 slots filled in their first week. Next slide, please. Earlier this week, on Monday, the Bayview Linda Brooks Burton branch opened for operation as a community hub, and Bayview has capacity to accommodate up to 14 youth. Next slide, please. Waiting in the wings are Ingleside, Chinatown, Sunset, and Ortega branches. Ingleside Branch Library is slated to open in early December, and the other locations may be activated as part of Phase 3, potentially in January. Next slide, please. In closing, the Community Hubs initiative is fulfilling the city's desired purpose to fill the void left by the San Francisco Unified School District's closure and support our most vulnerable youth and families. The Community Hubs initiative was recently featured in School Library Journal, which I've provided the article in your packets. I've also included the citywide dashboard as an explanatory document. Since that time, I've examined the data, and we are currently operating about 80% capacity in our operational community hubs, and that's not counting Bayview, which just opened this week. The empty slots will be filled by our partners at the Department of Children, Youth, and Families as they continue to work through the registration process with targeted youth and families. And that concludes the City Librarian's report. More than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, City Librarian Lambert. We are going to now move into our public comment on this agenda item. So operations, if you would let us know, do we have a caller in the queue?
Madam President, there's one commenter in the queue.
Could you please put the commenter through, please?
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. First of all, with respect to the elections department, I was very happy, first of all, to see notices on the street where people could hardly miss them if they went out at all in their neighborhood. And in my neighborhood, those announced that every district, every supervisorial district in town had a library location at which ballots could be dropped off. I'm not sure how much of a role the library staff had to take. We heard some from Kathy Del Neo, but in any case, I thought it was a terrific sort of connection between the two departments, and I thought that it raised the visibility of libraries even more than they already have, especially in the pandemic when there's little to no visibility and almost everything is closed and just curb service, basically. I do want to warn the library and Ms. Del Neo that having made this report, the possibility that San Francisco's margin for a certain candidate might get some strong comment from somebody in Washington, D.C. So just be ready. It's not coming from me, or I'm not recommending it. In any case, with respect to library SFPL to go, I think that there's very little that we see here. I'm always glad to hear information, but there's very little here about how the service works for the public. For example, the main library is boasting an average of 226 visitors a day. That compares to what in the past used to be a claim of 5,000 visitors, or 20 times that number. There's no comparison being provided for the branches, but I suspect that's also. And that means that 1/20th of the public is having an opportunity to visit the library compared with previous times, more or less. And that needs to be changed. I mentioned last time that Berkeley Public Library has way more hours total. All of their branches have curbside service, and all of them, every night of the week for 4 nights a week, you can go till 8 o'clock. We have no evenings whatsoever. There's no standard for how fast material that's available at the library gets to the curb. There's no standard, apparently, for what's going on with magazines, which are aged tremendously. We need this at a time when there's so much awful stuff online, and that's the only alternative we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Operation, any other callers in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter.
Please put the commenter through.
Marcia, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. I would like to say thank you to the public library staff right now, who are not only on the front lines, but also the staff that is serving as DSW, which are disaster service workers. I think that the public does not realize that the library workforce has been tremendously cut down by our service, helping with essential work during this pandemic. And I want to, as a library employee, say thank you to my colleagues out at the SFPL to go branches and the SFPL to go sites, because yes, the process is very overwhelming. They are doing the best they can to get the books out to the patrons, and we love seeing you, and we love explaining the process and how it's going so that we can be safe to give you guys safe materials. So my hat's off to everybody out there, the front lines, the DSW workers, and also just the people that are guiding us through this pandemic, because we are in uncharted territories and we need to have patience and remember those that are out there serving you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that comment. Operations, are there any other commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional.
Seeing that there's none, public comment on this item is closed. Commissioners, this is an opportunity for us to have discussion on the city librarian's report. You've heard the city librarian as well as other librarian staff give their separate reports. And so I'm going to go through right now and call on each one of you that have a question and or comment. And I'll begin with Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that this is just really impressive to me, what is happening with the library staff. I so appreciate the DSW team that has been deployed. You know, I know that the staff wants nothing more than to go back to their jobs, serving people with books and materials and resources and programs. They are so dedicated, but we are in a pandemic, and so the opportunities are so limited. So it really is, I think we have to recognize it's such a testament to the staff that the libraries, the branch libraries, are such vital resources and facilities in every neighborhood in San Francisco. The fact that they became voting centers, the fact that they are community hubs, this just demonstrates the vital and essential role these facilities play. And I just want to thank the staff for the work they've done over decades to make these libraries essential elements of a neighborhood and a community, and for keeping up good cheer and spirit during these very, very challenging times. It makes me very proud to be on the commission and to see what important roles our library continues to play in our democratic society. So thank you so much.
Commissioner Wolf, for those really wonderful comments. Commissioner Mall.
I'll just piggyback on what Commissioner Wolf said. I was so impressed with the many uses of the library right now, from election centers to community hubs, polling centers, to get out to SFPL to go. It's just really remarkable how what was a terrible, well, it's still probably a terrible situation, but how flexible and creative the SFPL has been during this pandemic. And I know that in the beginning, just the general public was like in withdrawal that they couldn't get their books. But now I think it's very heartening to see the numbers. And I guess I don't know how long it takes for each person to get their book or what the process is, but I'm imagining that it's not onerous because people are coming and the book business is still thriving. So I applaud everyone who has just changed their whole modus operandi for these difficult times.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Lopez, I see your hand is up. Is it up for this one or is that the last one?
I think it was the last one, but I just want to say that thank you to everyone. I know that from elections to the community hubs, we're serving our most at-risk communities as well. And just to know that there's access to books even during this pandemic, it's just great. I know that, the challenges are great because we also have to, everyone is vulnerable to this pandemic, to this disease. And just knowing that there are people there getting up early for elections, putting those signs, all of that takes commitment, dedication, and effort. So thank you to everyone in the staff. And thank you for the report. I think that it really gives a summary of all the great work that the library is doing.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lopez. I just want to put it for the record that Commissioner John Lee has joined us. John, it is good. Commissioner Lee, it's great to see you. Participant at any moment. Let the record show that we have a full attendance now. Members of the library, San Francisco Public Library Commission. I do not see any other hands up on this particular item. And so what I will say is, I'm not sure. Can you still hear me okay? Because
yes, Madam President.
Anyways, that's just at any rate. I would say that items that are part of the librarian's report is really quite remarkable, and the things that the staff has been doing, not only as disaster service workers, not only serving the public and the greatest act that we can do in our democracy, which is to vote, but also I was a part of another meeting earlier today where the library was exalted by another group of individuals that happened to be people on the San Francisco Interfaith Council. And they were just talking about how incredible the library workers and staff have been in regard to the COVID command center. And literally, I was just listening to other people from around the city just talk about the staff of the San Francisco Public Library. So I just wanted to say that I was really proud to be in that space. Obviously, I was in that space, not necessarily, representing myself as a commissioner, but when I heard that, I definitely acknowledged that I had heard these people say the things specifically talking about the staff and how the staff has stepped up in all these different spaces outside of as well. We're going to move on to, we want to thank the city librarian again and all the staff that gave reports to us this evening. So we're going to move on now to item number 6, which is a Library Commission meeting schedule for 2021. Commissioners, this is an actionable item, so we will take an action on this item. The information is before you right now, which is a draft schedule for 2021. And what I'm going to do at this particular time is to go into a public comment on this item. Operations, are there commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there's one commenter in the queue.
Please put the commenter through.
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes begins now.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. In other places, meetings are held such that it's convenient for the public, especially folks who might be working or going to school during the day. And even at the library, a meeting might be more fully attended by all of those folks and library staff. The 4:30 p.m. start time is very early, and certainly anybody working 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 would not be able to easily participate or even listen. So, as we have done before, without much expectation of the rather unchanging attitude of the Library Commission, but I think to serve the public and to allow the public to have an opportunity to participate and to witness, listen to Library Commission meetings, I think the Library Commission should seriously consider meeting at a later time so that working people can have a better opportunity to take part. And so to start at a later time. possibly just an hour later, 5:30. There are city councils that typically start at 7 p.m. And that's fine for people working and gives them a chance to maybe get a bite to eat before the meeting starts. There's usually very little public participation, unfortunately, in library commission meetings. And there's who knows, we may all have reasons why that is, but I think that there is very considerably a barrier to access when you have an early start that is basically during a working day. So we'd like to urge you to start the Library Commission meetings later than what you do now, perhaps 5:30. Any little bit would help. 4:30 is still part of a regular work day and for schools and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any other commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters.
Okay, seeing that there's none, public, this item is closed. Draft schedule. Is there any discussion on the draft schedule that you have available in your packets? And let the record show that there's no hands up in regard to making any comments discussion in regard to the draft schedule. And so with that, I would like to inquire whether a commissioner would like to make a motion.
This is Commissioner Ono. I would like to make a motion to approve the meeting schedule for.
I second.
We have a motion. Let the record show we have a motion from Commissioner Ono to accept draft schedule for 2021, and we have a second from Commissioner Mull on that. What I like to do, I'm going to we're going to do a roll call for the remaining commissioners. And when I say your name, say aye or no. And so, Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
And then myself, I register an aye as well.
Mary,
Looks like you're muted,
Yes.
Vice President Mull.
I register an aye as well. So the motion passes unanimously. It appears that Commissioner Mull may be having some difficulty. Just the motion is.
Oh, I said you didn't ask me for my vote, but my vote was.
I heard your vote to be aye. Okay. So we are now going to move on to the next item of our agenda, which is the 2020. Commissioners, this is again will be. We will after we hear from public comment. So operations, we are going to go into public comment on item number 7. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there's one commenter in the queue.
If you please put the commenter through.
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes starts now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and we can be reached and are glad to be reached at libraryusers2004 at yahoo.com. I might say that using a landline, I'm hearing a lot of choppy breaking up in the foregoing discussion. Just FYI for your information. With respect to the minutes specifically, there's a lot of good material here, but there are a number of things that I think need to be improved. In most cases, I'm suggesting very small changes. Under item 1, general public comment, the comment that we had was that we wanted to welcome and congratulate the new commissioner, the new commission member, the new commission appointment. The minutes, excuse me, say the new appointment. What is the new appointment? Is that the appointment of an interior? Is that the appointment of what? Of who? I think we were very clear that we meant, and we said, the new commissioner. So I'd ask you to put commission appointee or newly appointed commission member or something that indicates what I was commenting on. With respect to further down in there, we talked about Berkeley Public Library as a library that has comparable funding to our library in San Francisco on a per capita basis. And we were much more specific about what the open hours were for Berkeley, which was many more hours. I think we gave a number, something like 50 or 52, compared with San Francisco's 37 and a half. And we also commented that in Berkeley they had 4 evenings a week until 8 o'clock, and that in San Francisco there are no evenings, even though the public has told you repeatedly over the years that that's what they most want, evenings and weekends if you're going to give them hours. And we have 0 hours, I think, that need in the evening under the current regime. Also that we have only a fraction of the branches open, whereas in Berkeley, all of the branches have curb service. A couple other comments. The access to computer mentioned under item 2, we talked about a lack of access by 100,000 plus people to the internet, according to the city survey. And this is, there's a word this, we're talking about summer stride program.
Thank you for the comment. Options, is there another commenter in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
With that, public comment is closed on this item. Commissioners, we have the minutes for us. And is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing that there's no discussion, I would like to inquire whether a commissioner would like to make a motion.
This is Commissioner Wolf, and I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 15th, 2020 meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf. Is there a commissioner who would like to second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Wolf made the motion to approve the minutes of October 15, 2020, and that Commissioner Mall has seconded that motion. I will now go through and do a roll call on the remaining commissioners who will either vote aye or no. So when I call your name, say one or the other. Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
And I also that the motion to approve the minutes is approved unanimously. The motion passes unanimously. So we're going to move on to the final item on our agenda, which is to adjourn, and we'd like to call our final public comment of the evening. Operations, are there any commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there is one commenter in the queue.
Thank you. Would you put the commenter through?
Caller number 6, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. To the new commissioner and all the other commissioners who are, in some respects, relatively new, the library used to have an item at the end of the agenda that allowed the members of the commission to say what they would like to see on future agendas, subjects they'd like discussed, actions they would like to be taken, and so on. That's an opportunity for each one of you, representing the public, to express what you might want to see on a future agenda. And it makes sense at the end of a meeting because things can come up during a meeting that you might want to learn more about or discuss further. In many commissions and other bodies in the city and elsewhere, that's a standard item on the agenda, as it used to be with the Library Commission. But it's not on your agenda today, and it hasn't been for a while. It should be, and I would like to urge you to insist, before you adjourn, or any one of you to insist, that that item, which used to be called new business, be placed routinely on the agenda, giving each one of you a chance to at least suggest something you would like to have discussed. And for that matter, it would give the public a chance as well. So, for example, we heard a lot of praise for library workers, and absolutely, I would certainly agree with that. And I think that's certainly something appropriate. But as an example, we did hear at a prior meeting a lot of unhappiness from librarians over what their disaster service work was about and the serious danger that they felt they were being exposed to. That ought to be a discussion. There ought to be a discussion about why the library is so involved with disaster service work, whereas in other places, libraries are open or fully available at every location, as in Berkeley, for curb service or pickup service. Why is that? Is that the decision of the Library Commission? Is that the decision of the city librarian? Or is that the decision of the mayor? Who is setting priorities? Why is the library not an essential activity? In a time of election, in a time of huge disinformation, misinformation, and so on the internet, I think the library is needed more than ever to provide good information of all kinds, short-term stuff like newspapers and magazines, long-time stuff like books. I think you shouldn't adjourn until you insist that that's on the agenda. Thank you.
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
To make a motion to adjourn.
Madam President, you were muted for a portion of your statement.
Okay, let me go ahead and say that all again. We have brought the public comment to a close, and we're moving now into the commissioners. Commissioners, you have an opportunity to adjourn. Is there any discussion before we have a motion? All right, then, is there a commissioner who would like to make a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Lee,
thank you.
Make a move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, so let the record show that Commissioner Huang adjourned, and let the record show that Commissioner Lee seconded that motion. What I will do now is that I will call the remaining commissioners by name, and you will say aye or no when your name is called to adjourn. Commissioner Mall. Commissioner, let the record show that she said aye. She said aye. Commissioner Wolf. Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
And the last one is myself, Commissioner Wardell is aye.
No,
I'm sorry, there was
Commissioner-
a strange feedback. Oh, yes.
Commissioner Ono says aye.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being in there with me. The motion to adjourn passes unanimously. Thank you all for this robust meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. We want to thank the public that hung in there to the very end. And we want to thank all the management, the city librarian, and all the others that support this process and those that have presented tonight. We want to thank you for participating in the San Francisco Public Library Commission, and we want to wish everyone a good evening. Thank you.